algebra students. I just want you to know that I did this entire lesson at school today. I was so prepared, had it all ready to go for you guys, and when I went to upload it to YouTube, the sound didn't work at all. None of the sound recorded. So, I care about you this much that I'm staying up way past my bedtime, and I'm going to do this again. And so I decided to put on these mouse ears, because who doesn't love themselves in mouse ears? So here we go. Make sure you have a pencil and you're ready to go. I can't wait to teach you about fractions.
Hello everybody, happy Thursday to you. We are diving right into Unit 3, Fraction Operations. This is the second lesson. We are going to add and subtract positive and negative like fractions. Everybody cheer, either out loud or in your head, because I know you're thrilled to be learning about this. You should especially be thrilled because this is a lesson that you already have so much prior knowledge. You did this a lot last year. I know you spent a great deal of time practicing adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing of fractions. So the only thing that's different, we're throwing negative fractions into the mix. So we are going to use the information that we learned in Unit 1 with integer operations, and we're going to combine that with some prior knowledge from adding fractions and subtracting fractions. So the essential question, how do I operate with positive and negative fractions, and when might I use them in the real world? By the end of today, I want you to be able to add and subtract positive and negative like fractions. I'm going to kind of be bouncing back and forth. I have some notes that I want you to fill in, and then I'm going to show you a little bit of, or a few examples, and we're actually going to start off. I'm going to quickly review how to simplify a fraction. If this is something that you already feel really confident in and you know what to do, then you are welcome to fast forward just a bit. But I want to make sure that you remember that it's important when you write your final answer for a fraction, it should always be in simplest form. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And I just got back from playing volleyball, so sorry, I'm sweaty and tired and kind of gross, but you don't mind, do ya? Okay, so here we go. Simplest form. When you have a fraction like 12/18, 12/18 is not simplified because there are numbers that go into both 12 and 18, and so we can divide those numbers out and make our fraction smaller without changing its value. So the first thing I need to think about is what are the numbers, the factors that go into 12, and what are the factors that go into 18? And I know that they have some in common. I know that they are both divisible by 2, so 2 is a common factor, but I think there's a greater common factor, and we're looking for the biggest one. Otherwise, we have to keep going and keep going and keep going until it's in its smallest, simplest form. So 2 is a factor. Can you guys see that? It's like super glary. There's the 2. 2 is a factor. 3 is also a factor. 3 goes into 12, and 3 also goes into 18. Let's see, 4 is a factor of 12, goes into 12, but it doesn't go into 18, so that one's not going to work. 5, nope. 6 goes into 12, it also goes into 18. 7, nope. 8, nope. 9, 10, 11, 12 goes into 12, but it doesn't go into 18, so I think I've gone as high as I can go. So we want to use the greatest common factor to help us simplify this fraction. And the way that this works is that we take that greatest common factor and we divide it out. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So this fraction in simplest form is 2/3. This is like, I'm like holding this up with my elbow and it's really awkward to write. The next example, 4/20. So what are the common factors that 4 and 20 have in common? 4 is divisible by 2. 20 is also divisible by 2, but I think there's a greater common factor. 3, nope, that doesn't go in. 4 would work, so that's what I'm going to use. divide the top number by 4, and because we did that to the numerator, we also need to do that to the denominator. Simplify, 4 divided by 4 is 1, 20 divided by 4 is 5. So this fraction in simplest forms is 1/5. If you need more help or more practice with that, please feel free to ask Miss Wolf or I. Just raise your hand, come around. But know that moving forward, whenever you answer a fraction problem, it should always be in simplest form. All right, we can go ahead and open up to your guided notes for today. It's 03-02, add and subtract like fractions. Go ahead and write today's date right up here. It is November 14th, 2017. There is a vocabulary word today, and the vocabulary word that you need to know is like fractions. And like fractions are really any fractions that have the exact same denominator. Remember, the denominator is the number that's on the bottom. So if 2 or more fractions have the same bottom number or denominator, they're considered like fractions. And it actually makes life way easier when you're adding and subtracting. Essential question number 1, how do I add or subtract like fractions? When adding or subtracting fractions with the same denominator, add or subtract the numerator and leave the denominator. The denominator works like a unit or label. So we're going to look at this example right here down below about books. So think about this. Just as 5 books plus 3 books is equal to 8 books, 5/9 plus 3/9 is equal to 8/9. So we're kind of thinking about the denominator like a unit label or a unit. And we don't need to add those units over and over and over again. It just still stays the same unit, the same denominator. So all we're doing is looking at the numerators and adding those together. All right, I'm going to have you pause for a quick second. I want you to think about this question. What is your favorite book or movie? Sorry, that's a typo. What's your favorite book or movie? Will you please think about that and write down your answer right in this open space? And then pick back up when you're finished. Some of you might be wondering about why it says name that tune up there in the toolbox. We're going to have a little fun in a second. I'm going to share the beginning of a song, and I want to see if you know what it is. But for now, you're telling me, what is your favorite book or movie? And then we're moving on. Second example written in words, just as 5 books minus 3 books is equal to 2 books, 5/9 minus 3/9 is equal to 2/9. And if we write that using symbols or numbers, 5/9, which is 5/9, minus 3/9 is equal to 2/9. 2/9 is in simplest form because 2 and 9 don't have any common factors. So we're good to go, and we're moving on. Next example, 5/12 plus 6/12. I want you to stop for a second. I'm going to switch back to my face so that you can see. What I want you to do is do what I have done, and that is to circle the numerator, circle the operation, because that makes it stand out. And I know this might seem like extra work for you right now, but once we get into adding and subtracting with negatives, it's going to be a little confusing. And so I want this to be something that you do to help you with organization and to make sure that you're accurate when you add. So I circled the numerators 5 and 6, and I also circled the symbol plus. Both my numbers are positive, so I add like normal, and I get an answer of 11/12. Notice I didn't do anything with the denominators because when we add or subtract, the bottom number acts like a unit, and we keep that unit or label in the answer as well. The second example, 3/10 plus 2/10. Sorry, I tried to look at this and it's hard. 3/10 plus negative 2/10, excuse me. I circled the numerator. I want you to do the same. 3, and notice that I brought up that negative. So I know it looks like the negative is in the middle of the fraction, But whenever we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, I carry or bring up that negative symbol to the numerator and then think about it in terms of a negative. So when we're adding 3 and -2, those are different signs, which means we need to subtract to find the difference and which has more. There are more good guys than bad guys, so my final answer is +1 over 10. We do nothing with the denominator, it stays the same. Example number 3, -5 plus 13. Again, notice that I circled the numerator, including that symbol that comes before it, which is -5, and I also circled plus to show that I'm adding. However, because my signs are opposite or different, same signs add and keep, different signs subtract, so 13 take away 5 gives me 8. 8 over 24 is not in simplest form, it can be reduced. So what are the factors of 8 and 24 that they have in common? They're both divisible by 8. They're also both divisible by 2, but 8 is a bigger factor, so I'm going to use that one. Divide the numerator and the denominator by 8, and you get an answer of 1/3. There's more positives than negatives, so I feel good about my numerator being positive. Last example, -11/15 plus, -1/15. Circle the numerator, including the sign that comes before it. It's already addition, so I don't need to change anything about that problem, but I do need to think back to that song. Same signs, we add and keep. 11 and 1 makes 12. They're both negative. Same signs, we keep that sign. -12 over 15. 12 and 15 have a common factor of 3, so I divided the top and the bottom by 3 to get my simplified answer of -4/5. You should be writing out all of these examples so that you have something to look back at, and I want to make sure that you're either highlighting or circling those numerators as well as the operation. When we flip to the back side, which looks like this, I want you to notice that these problems are subtraction. Before you do anything, I would like you to please change those subtraction problems to adding the opposite. I'm going to do that right now. I want you to pause the video before you do any circling, before you do any adding or subtracting in your head, before you write out any answers. I want you to change these subtraction problems into adding the opposite. You need to make 2 changes on every problem. Pause the video and then come back. (3/5) minus 4/5 can be rewritten as 3/5 plus -4/5 because we're changing that subtraction to adding the opposite. 11/15 can be rewritten as 11/15 plus +1/15. (2/10 minus 4/10 can be rewritten as (2/10 plus (4/10). And (4/5) minus (3/5) can be rewritten as (4/5). We never change the first number. The second number becomes adding a +3/5. Now we can go from there. We've changed all of these problems into addition problems, and that is helpful because then I can use those rules, same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. So go ahead and check your thinking with mine. Here's how I rewrote my problems, and then you notice that I circled the numerators as well as the sign and the operation that falls between. I know that my denominators don't change at all, so I'm going to go ahead and add the numerators, keep the denominator the same. If the signs are different, then I actually end up subtracting. So please go ahead now and solve the 4 of these problems carefully and with precision. Check your sign, make sure that it's simplified, pause the video until you're done, and when you're done, stand up, take a stretch break, come give me a high five, and then head back to write your summary. I'm going to come back with the answers so that you can check your thinking, but I don't want you looking at the answers until you've come to give me or Miss Wolf a high five. Whoopsie. Okay, if you're coming back, I'm going to just read through the answers. The first problem, 3/5, negative 4/5, is negative 1/5. Those signs were different, so you should have subtracted 4 minus 3. There's more negatives than there are positives, so negative 1/5 is your answer. Next problem, 11/15 plus, because we changed that to add the opposite, 1/15 is equal to 12/15. However, 12/15 can be reduced. Divide the top and the bottom by 3, and the final solution is positive 4/5. Next question, same signs we add and keep. Negative 6/10 can be reduced to negative 3/5. And the last one, negative 4/5 plus 3/5, we end up in the negatives because there's more bad guys. Negative 1/5 is your answer. Uh-oh, what happened here? Sorry. Are we good? Hi, peeking out at you. I'm delirious, you guys. If I'm up past my bedtime, I'm just like a little loopy. Okay, for your summary, what I would like you to write is in 20 words or less. So you're writing a gist, 20 words or less. I want you to explain to me how to add like fractions when there are both positive and negative fractions. So if you need to look back at your notes, do that. You cannot copy word for word what we have written in the notes, but I want you to tell me in your own words, 20 words or less, what are the steps for adding and subtracting like fractions. You might start off by saying something like, to add or subtract like fractions, ... What are to know? What are the important things that I need to do? Go ahead and take some time to finish that sentence prompt in 20 words or less. When you're finished with that, I would like you to try and name this tune. You're pausing the video if you need to, writing your summary, and then coming back to name this tune. Back up here in your notes, in the toolbox, there's a place that says, or it doesn't say this on your notes, but I wrote name that tune, so right up here. I'm going to play you a little bit of a song, and you're going to see if you can write it down in that space. I'm not going to play very much of it, so you have to listen carefully. If you think you've got it, you're coming up to me or Miss Wolf, and you're showing me that you have it written in this place in your notes. I will not give you a reward unless everything else is completed, but if everything else is completed and you have the right song, you will grab a piece of candy. Here it is. That's all I'm giving you. If you think you know it, write it down. If you have a guess, write it down. If you're not sure, that's okay too. You are moving on to working on homework. So you may listen to music while you work. You may check in with Miss Wolf or myself for the key. I want you to not use a calculator unless you absolutely have to. So I would love to see your thinking, and I would love for you to show your work. I will eventually have you check your work with a calculator, but I'm going to be looking for work to be shown. So you have an assignment. It's 03-02. And there's 20 questions. And I'm going to ask that you do one thing, not for me, but for you. I want you to highlight, before you get started, I want you to highlight the questions that are subtraction problems so that you remember to change those problems to adding the opposite. I want to see that they're highlighted. I want to see that you've rewritten them as addition problems by adding the opposite. Look at my examples if you need to. Even write them down if you need to. and then get to work. Thanks for being great students. Remember to be kind to one another, to clean up after yourselves. And when you finish everything, there is a quizzes, and it's an integers quiz on Schoology that I want you to consider. We're going to get it done by Friday, so if you finish early, you can hop to that. All right? Thanks, guys.